Partial Breakaway Podcast with your hosts Nick and Junior and producer Vince, bringing you elite fantasy hockey information to help you win your fantasy leagues and win at life.
Episode 173 of the Partial Breakaway Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I'm co-host Junior, accompanied by co-host Nick, and three-time guest Victor Nuno, contributor of McKean, editor at Dobber Prospects, writes The Journey at Dobber Hockey, and of course co-host of the Fantasy Hockey Life podcast.
Entrance music.
Also known as Sandman.
The fantasy hockey doctor himself.
Victor Nuno! Sorry, guys. I was a little bit unprepared there.
Oh, you were nervous. It's normal to be nervous. It's normal to be nervous.
A little bit too. Oh, let's just unmute Victor there because he's still muted.
All right. Excellent. Welcome,
Victor. Hey,
thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. It's awesome to be back every year. So I really appreciate the invite. How you doing?
We're doing great. Thanks for being patient with us and very flexible with your schedule. We tried to get this done a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, things happen and stuff. But thanks for being flexible and still being available for us.
Of course, anytime.
Yeah, so it's been crazy. Ever since the draft, it's been nonstop news coming out, and I'm loving it. But before I get started on all the different things that are happening in this NHL offseason for the ages, Victor, how was the draft? Can you tell us about your experience? I know you were there in person, and one day hopefully we get accredited as well, and we could join you there. But how was it for you actually being in Buffalo this year?
Yeah, it was great. It was a lot of fun. The arena there in Buffalo has a really cool little downtown near the waterfront. I imagine the scenes at a game are really fun because it's kind of there's like bars and place to hang out, and you can drive kind of right up to near the arena. So that part was cool. I thought they did a really good job with just the whole setup, and all that was good. Of course, having it be this hybrid version for the last couple, it feels like fewer and fewer people are making the trip. We knew a lot of the teams didn't, less of the local media, fewer of the writers, fewer of just people covering it have been going. And so it seems like the press contingency has been diminishing over the years. We'll see if that changes, if they go back, or maybe depending on the location, that'll be different. But it was great. I think they had a really nice little interview media room where all the players would come, and I just kind of hung out there waiting to capture all the interviews. And so I spent less time on the floor, which is really fun and exciting, and the super loud horn whenever there's a trade or anything happening. That was fun. So I watched a bit from the floor, but mostly I was back there trying to grab interviews and talk to the players and talk to other scouts and analysts. But it was a great time for sure.
I saw you spent some time in Toronto. How'd you like Toronto?
Yeah, Toronto was awesome. I had been there a couple times before, but I didn't get to spend as much time, and I didn't know as many hockey people. Now through the podcast and through playing fantasy hockey, I have a lot of friends in the Toronto area, and so met up with a lot of people who showed me around. Went to a Blue Jays game, went to the Hockey Hall of Fame. And I did the little shoot at the goalie thing, and as I was standing in line, almost no one made any, and I made a couple, so I felt pretty good about myself. That was good. And went over to Toronto Island, played some disc golf, and just kind of walked around town. It was really fun. Apparently it was like the hottest day of the year when I was there, but
wow,
that's okay. It was still fun.
Well, it's just like the NHL to actually have something unique when all the managers were on the floor together, and trades, you'd have to walk up to the desk in order to do a trade and actually register it with the registrar right there, then and there. And then all of a sudden, they no longer have that, right? So they just became like everybody else instead of having something unique for a long time. It's just sad. I kind of enjoyed the NHL draft more than other drafts because of all the excitement. Who's talking to who's covering their mouth, speaking to another GM. It was always exciting.
Which GMs are at the NHL registry?
Yeah, who's at the NHL registry filing it in? But it was this draft had a lot of intrigue because there was quite a bit of talent near the top, I would say, and then it kind of dropped off pretty rapidly, at least from a fantasy standpoint. So I don't know, Junior, do you want to start with your first question? Because I was going somewhere with that, but I just wanted to see if you wanted to start off.
Just to touch on what Nick was saying, like we kind of figured there's a lot of players that have high floors in this draft, but not so many like the McKennas and the Stenbergs that could have like maybe a 90, 100 point season. Would you agree with that? Are we just a little naive here, or do you think there's multiple players here at stake that can really be fantasy producers? Elite fantasy producers.
I feel like it really this draft overall I think is pretty weak. I think a lot of people have seen that, and I think especially for fantasy, I feel like in the past, even though it's been a quote unquote weak draft, I feel like there have been guys with significant upside who maybe just have flaws in other areas. This year, I felt like it was just kind of weak overall, and even some of those guys that you're kind of excited about, there was a lot less exciting, and I feel like the upside is even less. So really, looking at my ranks, basically around 15, 16, it really drops off hard in terms of fantasy upside. So once you get out of the teens, which isn't usually the case, because usually even into the 20s and 30s, you have guys that, if everything goes right, he could be really good. Now I feel like in the 20s and 30s, if everything goes right, he might be an NHLer, which is far less exciting.
And it could explain why there was so many first round picks being traded this year.
Yeah, I think that was interesting. But there were some people definitely trading up to try to get into that range. We saw a couple teams do that. I think that was smart. There were also, like Detroit trading up for JP Hurlburt. That's one guy who I think was really smart to trade up for. Maybe we'll talk about him later. But I think after that, there were more like trading back, and I think that was probably smart once you get into the 30s. Like I think Carolina traded back 3 times and turned their 3 picks into 6 picks. I think that was really smart because the range they were in, there wasn't really a whole lot of reason to, move up or even take those picks when you can get some darts later. So there was a lot of weird movement for sure. And I think that was a lot because of the uncertainty, but also the cap rising and all the uncertainty with free agency. So I think there were a lot of strange factors in this draft overall that made it a little bit chaotic.
Fair enough. And Nick, do you want me just to carry on with the first part here?
Go ahead, please. Yeah.
Okay. So before we get into like the specifics of the drafts and the prospects in general, and specifically, we want to speak generally on prospects. So like, which statistics from a junior or NCAA level perspective do you trust most? Like when you're projecting how good a player can be fantasy wise, or a prospect can be fantasy wise? Is it just goals related? Is it how much they possess the puck? Is there anything specific that fantasy GMs can pay attention to more intensely if you want?
Yeah, I think there are a few things. I mean, obviously most NHL equivalencies or PNHLE focuses on points, and that's, certainly important. That's going to get you noticed, but there's a lot of other things for sure. Time on ice is really important. Time on ice, it's if you just look at NHL players, generally the top producers have the top time on ice, and that's something that's often hard to find for some of these junior leagues, but you can look at that. And then even strength scoring, because if players are power play specialists and that's all they do, they might have a hard time earning, in terms of time on ice, and might have trouble earning respect from their coaches. So that's an important one. I'll mention a couple others too. Especially for smaller players, there's the ability to compete. And I'll just mention my Fantasy Hockey Life skater card, which has a lot of this data that we pull from Instat. And for smaller players, one thing I always look at is puck battles won, because how hard they compete for the puck and try to win the puck is super important. And if they're a peripheral player who doesn't battle hard to get pucks, doesn't retrieve pucks well, that's not going to bode well for them, especially if they're a small player. But even if they're, a normal sized player, that's pretty important. And then two other things, their play driving, which you could look at: Corsi, Fenwick, net expected goals. Those are all things you can look at on my cards. And then transition game. Some players just, kind of let someone else do the work and then bang in pucks around the goal, which is certainly a skill set that can work. But generally, you want to see players who can transition the puck well. And that doesn't mean they're just fast skaters, because some of the best transition players move the puck really quickly and help in the transition that way. But they should really be able to transition well at a junior level, because if they can't do it at the junior level, they're not going to do it in the NHL.
Very useful information. Thank you very much. And I guess that's what made Viggo Bjork so popular in this draft, because his compete level must be high on your cards, correct?
Oh yeah. That's one of the things, people were always going on and on about Viggo and saying all these things, and it was like, okay, when you look at some of the underlying data, there's really not a whole lot to worry about, because he's super competitive in all these different situations, and especially him playing top line center in the SHL. So I just pulled up his player card. He had 85% puck battles won in the SHL. You're talking about one of the best leagues in the world, and he was beating almost everyone to the pucks. His transition game was awesome. He actually hit a fair amount, won 70% of his faceoffs. So, that was pretty incredible. You look at him at the J20 level, and the numbers are off the charts, because he was so dominant in that level. So, yeah, that's definitely something you look at. And when someone doesn't do that well, especially if they're a smaller player, then I say, yeah, those concerns are valid. Like it's gonna be a hard time for them if they can't win puck battles.
Nice. Okay, so when the draft is done and fantasy GMs are gearing up for their draft, what's the biggest mistake they make?
Well, I think it's natural to get really attached to the draft position. I think that is always going to anchor that player, right? Mm-hmm. And we have many conversations years, decades down the line, right? This person was drafted 4th overall. They should be amazing, right? And then right, highest paid defenseman in the NHL. But wow. if you had them drafted, in the second round, all of a sudden it's an absolute steal, right? So I think that's like, really just try to dissociate yourself from that. Although it does still matter in the sense that team is going to be anchored to that player and probably give them tons of opportunity. But you yourself should not worry so much about that. And especially, like, I'm sure we'll talk about some guys like Xavier Villeneuve. He went much later, but that, like, I wouldn't worry about that in terms of taking him in your fantasy draft, because, and Blyle, like some guys who went later, they still have tremendous upside. So not worrying so much about the draft position, and not worrying so much about who drafted them, because in general, I would say it doesn't matter all that much, because the top players are going to succeed regardless of whatever team drafted them or the environment. I think oftentimes that's used as an excuse. There are times when it matters, but I think in general, that's not really relevant, because the top players are going to push their way to the front no matter what. And it's not going to matter who drafted them or where they were drafted or anything like that.
Oh, Nick, we don't hear you.
Oh, kind of like the cream rises to the top regardless.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And if it doesn't, then there was concerns about that player. And, you see it all the time, right? Guys drafted who passed someone else. I mean, in Montreal, right? Like you saw Lane Hudson pass several defensive prospects along the way, right? And so that's an example of that cream rose to the top. Didn't matter where he was drafted, didn't matter those other guys were first rounders. It just, like, he rose to the occasion. And so that happens all the time. And so just try not to worry so much about that, I think, is probably a good lesson.
Would that be the same if I were to ask you the biggest mistake fantasy managers make when evaluating prospects in general? Would you say it's the same answer?
Actually, I think it'd be slightly different, because I think the biggest thing that fantasy managers mistake they make is that they focus so much on the upside. They focus so much on what the player can do. And that's important. Obviously, you want to see the skills, the traits, the shot, the speed, all those things, the things that made him a top prospect is important. And you want to think about that, but focusing only on that and not thinking about what they can't do and what the limitations are, because the limitations, the skills open the door, but the limitations and their ability to overcome them is what's going to allow them to walk through the door. Right. And so that's really important. And if they can't play away from the puck, if they can't, compete, if they can't skate very well, if they can't think the game at a fast enough pace, that's going to completely stymie their opportunity. And 95% of the game is played away from the puck. So we always focus on what they do with the puck, and that certainly opens the door for them. But if they can't at least be average away from the puck, it is not going to matter. So I think really focusing on, okay, now I like this player because of X, Y, and Z reason. Now, what is going to keep them from hitting that potential, and really being honest about that? And that should really, that evolves over time, right? Like what all those players' limitations are now, we're not going to know the full answer to that until a few years from now. But allowing yourself to be open and reevaluate that as it goes, I think is really important. And this is where it's really important to not be so focused on or so influenced by what team they play for, especially if they play for your favorite team. Like, you need to just really not worry about that, right? Because that can really mess you up if you're just, I want him to be good for my team so badly. That's a big mistake.
And it's interesting because that ties in nicely to what you said earlier about analyzing a prospect's time on ice, right? A time on ice is a good indicator as to how much they're trusted on both ends of the ice as well. So that's very interesting. Okay, well, you are the fantasy doctor, but even doctors make mistakes, Victor. Can you share a prospect you missed on and what you learned from it?
He's never going to come back on the show,
Hey, if you can't be honest with your own mistakes, then that's I do. I mean, there are many, of course. It's an evolving process, but I think Ryan Merkley is a good example, because I remember Ryan Merkley, and I was exactly doing that in the Ryan Merkley early days, was looking at everything he did well. Everything I just said is what I focused on. Like, watch him with the puck, and he was amazing, right? He could do so many cool things, and he could play hero hockey and go end to end and tangle players, and you're like, wow, this is so cool. Like, he's going to be amazing. And then actually it was Cam Robinson who we were chatting about him one day, and he said, watch him off the puck and then get back to me. And I was like, okay. I went and watched a bunch of film on him, and I was like, this is awful. And he's like, yeah, he's never going to make it. And I was like, at that time, it shocked me, because I just had trouble contextualizing that. Like, what do you mean? Like, I thought this guy was amazing. And then all of a sudden I'm realizing probably not. And that's where I really started to realize you really have to look at their limitation and what's going to prevent them. And the thing about Ryan Merkley is he never cared about defense. He never really tried. He never really learned how. And then eventually when he got to the AHL, he actually did try, but he was just really bad at it. And he never really got to being average. And that's what limited him. So if he had started trying early, then I think it might have been a different story, but he just never did. And he wasn't really competitive. He lacked the desire. And then it was kind of too late once he kind of started trying. So that was a really big lesson learned. Watch him away from the puck, watch what the limitations are. And sometimes people are bad defensively, but they actually try, and you can see the process of they're working on it. It's getting better. But Ryan was a pretty good example of, like, he never really worked that hard or tried.
I think many of us here were very high on Ryan Merkley, and probably based off the information you were giving us. So
I played at the time. No, I'm
kidding. Welcome, producer Vince, to the show, late as usual.
Wow. This World Cup is just changing everything for us. It's turning our world upside down. How are you, Victor?
I'm good. Good to see you.
Okay, so last question before we move on to Victor's top 10 fantasy rankings for the prospects. After that, we're going to drop into some personal questions we have. We're going to focus on the defensive prospects and a little rapid fire as well. So that's what you have to look forward to coming around just a little bit. All right. Do you have a prime example of a prospect you were very early on that maybe not many were that eventually hit, which probably gave you the name Fantasy Doctor?
Well, you guys are gonna like this one because it was Lane Hudson, and nice. Lane was one who, everyone talked about the size, and of course he brought his medicals that showed his bone age, and so a lot of that really spoke to me, because I was like, I know exactly what he's talking about, and he's definitely gonna grow. I didn't think he'd be that tall, but tall enough that it wasn't going to be a huge deal. And unlike Ryan Merkley, that's when I was looking at his, off puck game. And Lane was always someone who tried really hard. He worked hard. He was competitive. He put his body in positions to separate the other players from the puck, even at the NTDP and at junior levels. Like he used his position well to try to, separate players from the puck, to try to angle people to the outside. Like he worked at it. And I think even now in the NHL, you could say he's probably not great defensively, but he's good enough that it's not a problem. And that was a pretty clear example where I saw that and I said, he's going to be fine. And his offense was so special that, it kind of doesn't matter, but it does matter that his defense was good enough. And that was something that I saw early on. And I forget exactly where I had him, but it was definitely in the top 10. And I was definitely banging the drum for him all year. And even when he went so late in the second and everyone kept asking me, are you sure we should take this guy again? And I was like, yes, don't worry about it. Like, he's going to be great. And I must have told, hundreds of people that, and probably maybe half of them listen to me or less. I don't know, but they're all kicking themselves now, I'm sure.
I had just taken over a team in a dynasty league, and Lane Hudson was one of my picks in the second or third round of that draft. So actually second round, because I took him a little earlier than usual. So very proud of that one.
And I think if you redraft that draft right now, you're probably looking at him in the top 3 of that draft year. Like it's nuts. So kudos on you for actually having him in your top 10.
Yeah. Absolutely. And speaking of top 10, let's jump right into your top 10 prospects for this year's NHL draft.
All right. So I do my ranks a little differently, just as a disclaimer, because I rank based on upside and then percent chance that they'll hit that. So I do like a 1 to 10. 5 is an average NHLer. 10 is like the perfect hockey player, which no one is. So Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon might approach a 10. So in this draft, and then the percent chance is really how likely they are to hit it. And so some people look at my ranks and they might say, oh, you have Nikita Klepov ahead of Kila Malhotra, and it's not accurate to say that, because Klepov, I think, has more upside, especially in fantasy, but he's way less likely to hit his upside than Kila Malhotra. Like, Malhotra has a super high floor, but I don't think he has a high upside. So that's just as a disclaimer. So I have one player in the 9, one player in the 8, and then I have 9 players in the 7 range. And so it's Gavin McKenna, it's Ever Stenberg. Those are the top 2, and there's a pretty wide gap until you fall down to the next. And for me, it's Carson Karls, Chase Reed, Ryan Lynn, Tommy Blyle, Daxton Rudolph. So you noticed a bunch of defensemen there. And then the last 3 forwards are JP Hurlburt, Wyatt Cullen, and Nikita Klepov.
Wow.
Nick is very happy to hear your top 10.
I didn't hear Vigo in there.
You did not hear Vigo. Right. Vigo's lower. He's in the 6s.
I'm upset.
You see? See, this is why I wanted Victor before my draft.
So, Victor, what makes you put Tommy Blyle so high?
Well, his upside is tremendous. I think he has, top 5 upside in this class. His offensive instincts are incredible. He's an amazing skater. He's not necessarily just the like dangle you type. Like he has really good passing. He creates space. He opens up lanes with his feet as well. And his defensive game, the reason he's not higher, frankly, because I think he would have been top 10 if his defensive game was better. But back to the Ryan Merkley conversation, he's not that bad anywhere near that bad. He's pretty good. I think, well, I don't know how you all feel about the Q, but when my viewings, it always seems like defense is sort of optional. And so
that's definitely optional.
Yeah. So I think when he goes to, I think he's going to Michigan State, and when he goes to the NCAA in a year, he will learn better structure and better defense. And I think Tommy Blyle actually tries, and he sort of wants to be better, but I think the system doesn't really want him to be better. It doesn't really allow him to be that much better. And so I think it's partly just environment. And I think that when he does get a better coach, or not that he has a bad coach now, but a coach who really emphasizes the defensive structure, I think he's going to be fine. And that is going to allow him to completely unlock his offensive potential. And he's also one of the guys that I bumped up after the draft, because I think Nashville is a perfect place for him, because Roman Josi is going to eventually slow down a bit by the time he gets there, and he can just walk into that top power play, probably second pair role, and just, have all the opportunity for him.
Nashville had, everyone's speaking of San Jose, but I think Nashville had a pretty good draft with Blale and Wyatt Cullen.
They were definitely one of my top. I hate to say the whole winners and losers thing, but I do think that they had one of the best drafts out there, especially based on where they were picking, because they got, probably a top, what could be a top line forward, their top line center, perhaps, in Wyatt Cullen, who I think was a really great pick, and then their top offensive defenseman. And I think they got one of the top goalies in this draft as well, with Dmitry Borchev. So I like him a lot better than Ivankovic. And, they got some guys afterwards who are some decent, depth guys. And so I think Nashville was one of the winners for sure.
Nice. Anything you guys want to add to that? Or
yeah, I'm going to skip to a little bit because I think it's relevant. We mentioned Viggo Bjork. We mentioned that he's not in your top 10. How worried are you about Viggo Bjork and his projection at the next level?
So I'm not worried about his projection. I love Viggo, actually. And when you look at his competitiveness and his ability to play against men, he played in the World Championships. He played in the SHL. He played top line center in the playoffs for one of the best SHL teams. Like, everyone was looking at him. He was the man. And everyone in his age group and cohort speaks glowingly of him. Like, he's the best player they've ever played with. The issue I have is in fantasy, because to me, Viggo Bjork screams Zach Benson. And I love Zach Benson. He's an awesome player. Like, look what he did in the playoffs. He helped Buffalo. But is Zach Benson a fantasy darling? Is he a strong fantasy asset? Not really. And I don't know that he ever will be, because he's too good all around. He cares too much about all aspects of the game to really cheat for offense and to, try to bump up his point totals. Like, he's never going to do that. He's never going to cheat the game. And Bjork is the same way. He's just so strong, all situations. There's a chance that Viggo Bjork ends up being like Jonathan Taves, with such a high floor that he plays with elite wingers and then maybe eventually gets those point totals up. And I would love to see that. I just don't think it's going to happen. That's why I have him lower. But in terms of him playing in the NHL, zero concerns. Like, he might even play this year. He's that good and that ready, so
they could use him.
Yeah, right. Like, he could play third line center this year. No problem.
Yeah. Did you want to cut away to our sponsor, Junior, or do you have time?
Yeah. Okay. Let's do the script quickly. A word from our sponsor here. I'll pull it up. It's very short. All right. It all comes down to this: a battle, and DraftKings has you covered every step of the way. The DraftKings Sportsbook app is now available in all 50 states and includes all markets. Sweat every shift of the series all in one place with one app. New DraftKings customers sign up with code THPN and spend $5 to get $200 in rewards within 21 days. That's code THPN. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Guys, there it is.
You still with us, Junior?
Yeah, well, it's not playing
with DK Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 1-800-MY-RESET. New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino in Kansas, that text pass-through may apply in Illinois. 21 and over. Void in Ontario. Event contract trading with DraftKings Predictions involves risk of loss. Sportsbook bonus bets expire in 7 days. $50 in Predictions dollars issued weekly for 3 weeks expire in 1 year. Redeem one non-withdrawable reward. Availability varies. Predictions offer void in New York. Ends June 28th. Terms at dkng.co/audio.
All right. I'm going to move on to another one of my questions because, I kind of want to steal a lot of attention here from our guest. But I had a draft where I had the 2nd overall pick, the 5th overall pick, and the 9th overall pick. And I wanted to ask you, how crazy is it if I took Wyatt Cullen at 5 overall? I'm feeling a lot better after what you said previously, but what's Wyatt Cullen's upside? Are we talking he's a points-only guy, and what can we project in Nashville moving forward?
Well, I do think it's a little crazy that you took him 5th overall for sure. It's not the craziest thing you could have done, but definitely not something I would have done. I think there are better defensemen at that range, but if you wanted a forward, I don't think it's totally insane. He has grown so much and hasn't quite figured out where his limbs are in space. So when he finally does that, I think that the upside with Wyatt Cullen is I mean, we don't know. It could be huge. Like he could be the 1C, or top, winger, top line, top power play. He could be point per game plus. Like I think the upside is there. I just think it's kind of unlikely that it will happen, but we don't know. And so there's definitely a wide range of outcomes with Wyatt Cullen. He's got the bloodlines from his father, and I'm sure the details of his game are going to be really good because that's how Matt was. But I think he has a lot more raw skill, and I think he has a lot more potential to hit that. He's also super young, right? Like he's a September 8th birthday, so he's 7 days from being eligible for next year's draft. And if he was eligible for next year's draft after being at the University of Minnesota for a year, this would have been an entirely different conversation. Plus, he would have been 6'1", for a couple of years now, and that height and that strength and everything would have really fleshed out a bit. So I think he has one of the widest ranges of outcomes and one of the longest runways to improve of any of the prospects in this whole draft. So, certainly we could be looking back on this and saying, yeah, that was a brilliant pick a few years from now. I think that is possible. I think there's a smaller chance of that happening, but it could be.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note everybody's league is different, right? So we're looking at leagues where certain positions might be more valuable than other positions. In particular, the league that we were talking about, there was I think we start 8 wingers, 4 centers, 6 D. And I've been building my D core for a very long time. So I was looking at forwards, exactly like you said. So I ended up with Stenberg, Bjork, and Wyatt Cullen, which is why my questions were surrounded mostly to them. And I wonder if other GMs out there that are looking for forwards are going to have the similar questions as well. Maybe some of our listeners. Vince, you want to move on? Not talk about Wyatt Cullen or Viggo Bjork any longer?
I gotta get Junior to send me the question. So
okay, so Junior, why don't you take the next one then?
Yeah, okay, so we were very interested in a guy like Ethan Belchetz, and we just kept looking at each other during the draft and be like, is he going to get drafted now? How about now? Is he okay? He's got to be next. And then he just kept sliding and sliding and sliding. Why do you think he dropped? And what do you think of Ethan Belchetz as a fantasy prospect?
Yeah, we were all doing at the draft too. Like when the picks came up, we were like, it's got to be Belchetz, right? He is one of the unique players in this draft for sure. Like he's huge and he's physical. He's got a lot of bash. So if you're in a league that rewards block shots and hits, he's probably the bashiest guy that has the most skill. So in that combination, he's pretty unique. I was going to mention that Gleb Pugachev, who Montreal took, is kind of a similar version to that, but with less skill. So he's also very bashy. But Belchetz, I think, if anyone's going to be the next, Porter Martone, it might be Belchetz. The issue with him is that he takes a lot of shifts and sometimes multiple shifts or parts of games off where he's just not really engaged or trying that hard. And that's tough. It's tough when you see that because oftentimes it can be hard to motivate those players to care all the time and to really impose themselves. But if Ethan Belchetz can get to that point where he's imposing his will all the time and really, using his top potential the entire game, then he could be a real unicorn in this class. And he could be a supreme power forward who bashes and is, close to 70 plus points, which would be incredible. So I think the upside is tremendous. The landing spot is interesting because it feels like the Mammoth are just drafting with a tape measure and trying to get the biggest players. They already have some huge players. They have some pretty good smaller skill guys too with, Schmaltz, Keller, and Cooley. But it seems like they're trying to surround them with these giant trees. And Belchetz is, they took Daniel Boot a couple years ago. I think Belchet's is a way more skilled version of Boot. And so I think that could end up working really well. And maybe Boot is kind of more of a bottom six or third liner kind of thing. So I really like the gamble. I like that I think it's a decent landing spot for him. There are probably some other spots where he would have had less competition for that role. And I think just to touch on Pugachev, I think that's an awesome landing spot for him because that's one thing that Montreal does not have is that really big punishing power winger. And I think they kind of need that because a lot of their star players are small. And so it's kind of perfect. So I think that landing spot was a little bit better. But Belchet's in Utah is still pretty good, I would say.
Nice. Vince, you want to add that second part or should I?
Yeah, I'll do it. So, Victor, between Ryan Rubrick, who is another big winger with skills, how does he compare to Belches? Like, can he be around the same fantasy rating, or is he just a tier lower than him?
Yeah, I have Rubrick way lower. And the issue with Rubrick is what I said about taking shifts off and not necessarily being as engaged was way more of a problem for Rubrick. I mean, Rubrick has some of the best skill in this draft when he wants to, but he just didn't do it very often. And it was kind of a huge problem, especially he went down in his production this year, which is terrible sign during your draft season. And a lot of it had to do with his, things that were in his control, his engagement, his willingness to battle and to fight for pucks and for space. He just didn't, and so personally, I think I don't have a lot of time for those types of players because I find that doesn't change very much usually. If they have a hard time competing in junior, like it's generally not going to get better when the space is smaller. They have less time to react. The players are bigger and more physical. Right now, Ryan Rubrick is bigger than most people he's playing against, and that is not going to be the case as he moves up in levels. So I feel like it's going to get harder. That all being said, he definitely has upside still, and if for some reason it can be unlocked and he can reach it, then yeah, he could be amazing. I think it's unlikely. That's why I have him a bit lower, but he's definitely an interesting player for sure, and one of the few like that late in the second round that has top six upside because of the draft being so weak.
That's something I've always struggled with in terms of understanding how a prospect that has that much skill struggles to compete in juniors when you want to be noticed by the NHL, before a draft. I never understood how these prospects could just not give it their all the time.
Well, I think, what's interesting, it kind of depends on how you grew up playing hockey, because a lot of these players, they never had to try that hard. They were just so much better than everybody else, right? And so when you're always so much better than anyone else, you don't have to, like, no one ever punched you back, right? You're just like the bully in the schoolyard, and you're just beating up everybody. And then all of a sudden someone punches you back and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, this is hard. And I think that happens to a lot of players, right? They go around and it's just easy for them. And they never really learn the skill to battle hard. That's why sometimes these younger or these smaller players, especially like Wyatt Cullen we were talking about, a smaller player then who grows is a really unique profile, because he always had to compete super hard. And then he grew, and all of a sudden he's this large frame player that competes super hard and knows how to do all the other intangible things, and now is bigger. It's kind of a perfect storm for him and players like that. So I think a lot of it's probably just people are wired certain ways, but I think a lot of it is how they learned. And did they ever learn to push back and to compete? And a lot of it has to do probably with, did they represent Canada or whoever internationally, right? Did they ever play against the best of the best? And how did they do in those situations? And I don't think he has. And so I think that's a big part of what has happened with him. And you see it from time to time. It happens in different situations. I'm just checking myself now. He did play at the U18s last year, but not this year. So he has had some, and he has had production, but he hasn't had as much as maybe some of the other players.
Noted. Okay, so let's move on to the behemoth centers of this draft. There's three in particular: Ilya Morozov, Oliver Suvanto, and Maddox Dagenet. Who would you be most interested in terms of a fantasy perspective here? Please say
Well,
Dagenais.
yeah. Well, I was gonna say it's definitely not Subanto. I don't think he's gonna score. He might be a good depth bottom six. I think it's definitely Dagenais. Although I have a lot of time for Morozov. I think that he was super young and he was on a really bad NCAA team as a draft eligible. It was super hard for him. So I could see the path for Morozov to develop some more skill, to develop some more of that skill and opportunity. Maybe he transfers to a different program. Maybe he has some more skill around him. He is slated to go back to Miami, Ohio. But sometimes those players, when they're actually surrounded by more skill and talent, it can unlock them. And Morozov is a very competent two-way all-around player. But I think it's definitely Dagenais because he's well, first of all, if you track bash and hits, he's super bashy. And so he's going to give you a high peripheral floor. He's super competitive also. Like Dagenais will punish people. He'll win puck battles. He'll track down loose pucks. He's excellent in transition, his play driving. So he's got all of that. Plus, I think he's got some untapped skill in terms of finishing. So I definitely think it's Dagenais of those three.
All right. Other than Blyle, is there a prospect that went in the second round that our listeners should keep an eye out on?
Yeah, well, Blyle actually went 31st, but yeah.
Oh, yes, you're right.
There
I can't remember the draft.
It was Villeneuve. Villeneuve went in the second round.
We were live for 5 hours at that point, so.
Yeah. Well, tell me about it. I was so exhausted. We thought we were going to go out for wings and like hang out afterwards, and we just went back to the hotel and crashed. We were all exhausted.
Yeah.
I mean, some people went out, but not me because I'm old. So there are a few people. So Villeneuve, we didn't talk so much about Villeneuve, but he has a lot of upside, but I think the range of outcome with Villeneuve is really high because he doesn't play good defense. So we'll see about that. But I have a few names for you. So Nicholas Aram Olsen is one that I really like. He's going to the Canucks. I really like that pick. He's Norwegian, and he's got a ton of upside for him. Victor Plant, who's going to play with Max and Zam in Minnesota, and he's the youngest Plant brother, and that's the reason why Max is going back, and I think it's going to be super fun to see them together. And Victor Plant was at the NTDP, which was super weak this year, and so didn't really have a whole lot to play with. So he's someone who I could see popping off next year, especially playing with Max, if he gets to play with Max, which I'm pretty sure Max is going to twist the coach's arm into allowing that happen. So I could see Victor popping off. Mathis Preston is definitely someone with a high upside, although he has serious compete and off-puck issues. So I have some questions about Mathis Preston, but he definitely has high upside. And the last one I'll mention is Viggo, spelled with a W, Viggo Sorensen. Viggo's a really interesting case because he played basically like tier 4 hockey in Sweden, but it's because he's a type 1 diabetic and needed to be close to home and to his doctors and family. But he was awesome when he played internationally, and when he did play in the higher levels, Viggo Sorensen is definitely someone you could see popping off next year. So I'm actually going to write an article for the Journey that is who are the guys in this year's draft that I expect to pop off next year, and I think he's definitely gonna be one of them.
Would that be the same type of diabetes Max Domi has?
Yeah, type 1 diabetic like Max Domi, right? Mm-hmm. So he has to inject, he has to monitor his sugar constantly. It's very manageable, but it's pretty serious, and especially when you're a young person and learning to be an adult and managing that yourself, like you could die, and people do from not managing correctly. So it's really tenuous. And so whenever something like that happens, you have to ask yourself, is it reasonable why he made this choice? Is it reasonable why he didn't challenge himself more and why he took the path that he did? And I think in this case, you have to say absolutely it was reasonable, right?
Yeah,
for sure. Vince, do you want to take us into the defensive part, or Nick, either or?
Yeah, sure. So let's say you mentioned in recent patron cast that Karels has the highest bash and Reed would be your top player in the draft. Other than those two, which defenseman has the most points upside in this draft?
I think it's got to be Ryan Lynn. I love Ryan Lynn. He's super talented, and the reason he didn't go higher is that he's 5'11", but he is really good and competitive defensively. People think of him as an offensive defenseman, and he is, but he is really good defensively. and he's an awesome skater. He played on an awful Vancouver Giants team. I mean, I went to a game and I saw it was really rough. Like, he had to play so much defense. He had to really try to keep the puck out of his net and drive play the other way. And there were so many instances where he would see this pass through a lane to one of his forwards, and his forward would just kind of be like, "Oh, the pass came to me. I didn't realize it was coming." And so many plays that Ryan Lynn tried to create didn't work. But when you saw Ryan Lynn internationally for Canada, you could see he was the best defenseman on those teams that he played on most of the time, and he's got a ton of talent. I don't love the landing spot for him because he's got some competition there, but I still think that Ryan Lynn is the preferred power play quarterback ahead of Sam Dickinson, ahead of Keaton Verhoff, and ahead of Luca Cagnoni, who clearly I don't think San Jose values that much because they just drafted several defensemen ahead of him. But I think it's going to be Lynn, but Lynn is going to require a few seasons. Him going to Denver, though, is so good because David Carl has a history of developing especially slightly undersized defensemen. And so he's going to bring out the best in Ryan Lynn. And I think when Ryan Lynn gets to San Jose, he's going to walk into that power play and be awesome. So I would definitely get your shares of Ryan Lynn when you can.
And between these four defensemen, Victor, they've all been drafted very high in Smits, Rudolph, Verhoff, Gustafsson. Which one do you believe could tap into their offense in the NHL?
Definitely Rudolph. I mean, I think Rudolph has the most offense of those four. I don't think Malte Gustafsson has offense to speak of, and Albert Smits has a super high peripheral floor, but I don't think he's going to score points. You know, he might be a 30 to 40 point guy with just tons of bash, and you know, he'll get some secondary assists. And then the other question is Keaton Verhoff, and if Keaton Verhoff gets to run the power play, then sure, but I think there's some serious decision-making issues with Verhoff, and I know a lot of people want to excuse that because he was in the NCAA, but I feel like he showed some of those issues for Canada too. Like, he would skate into areas without a plan of how to exit or how to execute his vision, or if he even had a vision. So that makes me worried. But Verhoff has a super high floor, so he's going to play probably like second pair. I think worst case scenario for Verhoff is he's like Cody Ceci, you know, with tons of bash. Questionable decision making, but puts up enough points that is somewhat valuable, but you'll be disappointed in fantasy.
Yeah, so there's a chance Ryan Lynn becomes the top power play leader for San Jose with that loaded San Jose team over Verhoff.
I think is the most likely outcome, actually. That's my sense, actually.
Wow.
Before we move on to the next question, Nick, I just want to ask, were you as surprised as, I know you have him in your top 10, but were you as surprised as many throughout the NHL world that Rudolph was selected for by the Buffalo Sabres?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, in many ways, it was like a couple of years ago when Yakimchuk, we all thought would be the last of that grouping, and he went first. And I think it's the same here. Like, many of us thought Rudolph would be the last of this top six group of really, really high floor defensemen, and he ended up going first. I don't really understand. I mean, I didn't really understand the Buffalo move in general. Like, why do you want fourth overall? It was kind of strange. And then they picked Rudolph, who, you know, I guess he's a righty, so that's better than having so many strong lefties. But you have Rasmus Dahlin, so it just seemed kind of strange there. But, you know, it was confusing. And I think actually of all the landing spots, I probably hurt Daxton Rudolph the most, more than any other player, because, I mean, maybe Dahlin will be slowing down by then, but I kind of doubt it when Rudolph gets there. And so he's going to be sort of blocked for a while until something changes. Maybe they trade him, but I kind of doubt that, especially they picked him fourth overall.
And I think that's
Byram
why
got traded.
Byram got
They
traded.
didn't draft him though, but yeah.
But I think that's why it's so important where these players get drafted as well, because it could increase their value or decrease their value based on the situation that they're going into, and what kind of opportunities that they're going to get. So somebody that you might have looked at as top of the board might have not landed in a great place, and then you're kind of questioning that, right? As a fantasy GM moving forward. Mm-hmm. Vince, we're not going to ask the Lynn, Blyle, and Villeneuve question because we kind of went over them and we're kind of running out of time here. We have a soccer game we all want to get to. Do you guys want to do the rapid fire?
Sure, if Victor's got time for it, let's do it.
Yeah. Let's go. I got the game on in the corner here, so and I do have Mexican heritage, so I'm definitely.
Oh, there you go.
Please be sure to keep us updated while this is happening.
Well, and England didn't sleep at all, so I don't know if you saw all those Mexican fans keeping them awake all night, but that was something to behold. All right, let's start with the first question. Rapid fire. Doesn't have to be an very long answer, but very quickly, which prospect is the most likely to score 40 goals in your estimation, Victor, if anybody from this draft class?
Well, probably McKenna, because he's the most likely to do a lot of things. But I think if it's not McKenna, I'll say JP Hurlburt.
Oh, nice.
We should have spoken more about JP. I thought that was a great pick by Detroit, and I love the landing spot as well.
They finally took a chance on high ceiling. Instead of drafting the safe pick, they finally went high ceiling, and I think a little too late, but they should have done it maybe in past years. But yeah.
Yeah, what was
very
funny
happy
is
for that.
Said, I agree with you. That's the one thing they didn't have. And then the funny thing is they asked him who your favorite player was, and he said Dylan Larkin, and we all went,
ouch.
All right. Next question, and then I'll let one of my co-hosts do the next one after that. Which prospect is most likely to hit 90 points? Well, there we go again with McKenna, but anybody else?
If not McKenna.
Yeah, I think it's McKenna. But if it's not McKenna, I think it's Stenberg, which is probably also not that interesting, but it's accurate.
All right.
Who has the highest point upside in the draft that nobody is talking about?
This is a really good question. I like this one. I thought about this one. I thought about taking some easy answers too, but I'm going to give you a really deep cut, and I'm going to say Thomas Schrenko. Thomas Schrenko, who went, was it third round, I think?
Third round, yeah.
Yeah, he went 81 to New York. And Schrenko, it's an interesting and difficult evaluation because he was playing in the Slovakian league, which is sort of one of these leagues that has a few really good teams and a bunch of really bad teams. And he was on one of the good teams. So he looked great at times, but it's like, what was the quality of competition? But then at the World Juniors, he was awesome. And he definitely is like a mostly offense kind of guy. But I think, especially as you get later, Thomas Schrenko is someone you should probably just take in your second or third round because he's got upside. And most of the guys in that range don't.
Interesting. Okay, good to know. So remember, listeners, Schrenko, New York Rangers. Does Tynan Lawrence still interest you in a points-only league?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Lawrence had a very weird season, and I love that he bet on himself and transferred to BU. I think it didn't go well, but BU is going to be awesome next year. They have so many good imports coming, and so I think Tynan Lawrence is someone we could see next year go well over a point per game in the NCAA, and we'll all be just saying, wow, how did we not see that last year? So definitely, I think it's way too early to close the book on Tynan Lawrence, especially he's still 17. He's an August birth date, so he's got a ton of runway. Frankly, I didn't really like a lot of what I saw from him this year, but I'm just also thinking about he's young, he challenged himself. I think that there's still potential there. Definitely.
The team was bad too, and I think that reflected on his perception as well.
Yeah, BU struggled so hard this year, and when he was at Muskegon, he was great. So if he would have stayed there all year, we would have said, "Wow, look at this great USHL player! Can't wait to see what he does in college." The fact that we did see some of that in college made us a little more skeptical, which is probably slightly unfair because in this case, unlike the Keaton Verhoff case, I don't think much of this was Tynan Lawrence's fault. I think that he was in a really bad situation.
All right, let's finish it off.
All right, so who is the most overrated prospect in this draft class? So someone who's been talked about a lot, but...
Yeah, well, cover your ears, Vancouver Canucks fans, because it's Caleb Malhotra. And, I think Malhotra's going to play hundreds of NHL games. I think he's going to help Vancouver win. But I think he's a third-line center, middle six at best, and super high floor, quality character guy. A lot of people talking about that. They're bringing in all these guys that are character guys, and I think that's who he is. But I think if you're hoping Caleb Malhotra is a 70-plus fantasy asset, I think you're going to be really disappointed.
Oh, that eliminates the next one.
That eliminates. I think even the JP Hobart. Yeah, because is like Mattis Preston, is he? Like, I don't think you see him as very close fantasy-wise as JP Hurlburt, but does he have any fantasy value at some point?
Yeah, I mean, Mattis Preston has significant upside if he can hit it, but I just think he's less likely. So, but if you're pitting him against Hurlburt, it's no contest. It's Hurlburt by a mile. But if you're in your later second, third round and and Mathis Preston is there, sure, take him because it could work out well. I just doubt it will, and especially because he went to Anaheim, and Anaheim basically took 3 home run swings, and I definitely like Nikita Klepov the best. I would not draft Marcus Nordmark at all. I think that he's got attitude issues, and everyone I talked to said it's going to be a problem. So I wouldn't draft him. And then you have Preston, who is got a lot of off puck issues, and so between those 3, probably only one of them, if any of them, are going to hit. And I think it's going to be Klepov. So I like that Anaheim took the swing, though. They said, "Why not? Let's just see what happens," and they swung big. And if one of them hits, great.
It's too bad after the final year of his ELC, he's gonna have to leave because Verbeek won't pay him.
Well, maybe Verbeek will learn his lesson.
I think he should. Before we go into the final question, Victor, I have a question because I'm in a debate for one of my drafts, and it's a dynasty keeper league, but we kind of could drop some players at the end of the year. So I have a choice between Chernyshov or Kanserov. Which one do you think fantasy-wise is going to be?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think what's that?
That's the look I have when I think of which one to pick.
Well, I'm debating whether it's actually an easy answer or not, because I do like Kanserov, but I think it has to be Chernyshov. I think Chernyshov is going to play with Celebrini, first of all, and I think we can all agree now that's better than playing with Bedard. And Kanserov we haven't seen it yet. I believe in him, and I believe in the player, but Chernyshov has already played in the NHL, and he looked awesome when he did, and frankly should have had more play. And he's got the size, and I think the other thing about Chernyshov is that he has a very unique skill set that San Jose does not have anywhere else, and they're going to put him in that position to succeed. So I think it's got to be Chernyshov, actually.
Perfect. Done.
Can I add one more question? Okay, Nick, I see you have your hand up, so please.
Well, I just wanted to finalize something because we talked about a lot of defensemen, a lot of forwards, but there were like 30 goalies drafted in this draft, which is record-breaking, I believe, for a draft. Yeah, and I think that has more to do with the fact that nobody knew who to take near the end. It was an indictment on the draft class itself, I think. But like, who's the best goalie out of this draft? Who has fantasy upside? Is any of them going to play any games?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. That says more about the skaters than it does about the goalies, for sure. Like, I don't think any of these goalies are amazing. Like, there's no Wallstedt, there's no Askarov, there's no one anywhere near that level. Now, someone might end up being that good, but they're certainly not that good right now. I think Tobias Treball is actually the best goalie in this draft, which is unusual because it seems like the best goalie is not always the first one taken. Very rarely is it the best one taken, but in this case, I think it might be. I like him the best. I like Borichev also. I think he has really good skills. I love the landing spot in Nashville, and I really like him as well. I like Brady Noling that San Jose took. He is big. He still needs a lot of refinement in his positioning and his movements, but he's a big blocking goalie who has a lot of potential. I like the Toronto goalie, Jussi Ainasto. I think that was a good pick for them. Minnesota, Ruzicka, I think, was good. I really like what Calgary did too. Calgary took basically the opposite of Dustin Wolf because the goalie they took is big and is kind of more athletic than what Dustin Wolf is. We know Dustin Wolf is smaller but super precise with his skating. Well, that was Treball, and I think that's a perfect complement to the Wolf style. And when Treball does make it, I think it'll be, two very different styles, which I think works well for a team because it kind of depends on what your team is like at that point and what you can adjust your style to. So it's really nice to have two different options. So those are the main ones that I like and I think are most likely. But, it's kind of one of those things too, when you get towards the end of your fantasy draft, when you're in like the mid 20s, you should probably just take a goalie rather than another skater at that point, because the likelihood that the goalie is going to play is higher than any of those skaters, and not only play, but be relevant, because at that point, any of those guys could be a split starter, whereas those forwards or defensemen are not going to be top line or top power play at that point.
Okay, sorry, I this was not planned, but neither was me having the opportunity to draft a Chase Reed, and it seems as though I will have this opportunity now. Should I jump on that, or is it not as evident as we think that he'll be a point producer?
The only thing
There's
I don't
no
like
bash
about
in this league.
there's no bash.
No.
The only issue with Chase Reed is not really his problem, but it's the fact that Seattle has really struggled to have scoring talent, right? I think they're trying to fix that. We saw that they tried to sign Panarin, they tried to sign Jason Robertson. It seems like a problem that people don't want to go there, though. So I don't know how they're going to fix that. They haven't really. I mean, they have some high-end forwards that might hit. You know, we've seen Jacob O'Brien, Berkeley Cadden is kind of coming around. We'll see. Jager Furcus is coming along okay, but I still don't think any of those guys are huge difference makers. And what they really don't have is goal scorers. You know, they have some setup guys, but they don't really have the finishers. And they have identified that that's what they need, but they have trouble getting it. I kind of feel like, though, that Chase Reed is a piece that you build around, and I think that he's going to help them no matter what. So I probably would still do it. And they've never taken a defenseman in the first round until him. They've never had a defensive prospect anywhere near his talent. So I think you got to do it. I mean, unless you have Carroll's available, I would take Chase Reed. He's my fourth best available, so I would take him.
Fair
Victor,
enough. Thank you.
Let's give you some room here to plug what you're working on, where people could find your work, and get you to the game, which I know already started. So, can you do you have a little bit of time to plug in your stuff here?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for that. And yeah, you can listen to Fantasy Hockey Life, the podcast I do with Jesse Severe. Right now we're doing team by team previews, so we're like halfway through. So definitely check those out because it's a lot of fun. We talk about goalies, skaters, prospects, the whole thing. And then I write a couple of articles. I write the Dynasty Stock Watch where I go team by team, and that's McKean's article and kind of looking at who are some prospects you might want to buy, who you might want to sell. And so that's some good advice there. And then the Journey is an article I write for Dauber, and that's free. And so you can look at all that. I'm going through a bunch of draft stuff right now. So looking at bashers, guys who don't bash, guys with high upside, guys who are going to pop off next year, top picks from the draft, all that kind of stuff. So lots of stuff that you can follow me at. I also do some editing at Dauber Prospects, but that's more behind the scenes. So yeah, lots of things, and really appreciate you having me on, and definitely happy to come on anytime.
Well, we definitely enjoy your work. We are subscribers and Patreons to your Fantasy Hockey Life podcast.
Yes.
So we are joining the Tidy League for the first time this year. So we're excited. And we're already in the DPR League from DPR days. So
I believe there's still spots available in the Tidy. So, right? Victor?
Yeah, definitely. I forgot to mention that. So we do a tiered Dynasty League through Fantasy Hockey Life, and if you like Dynasty, this is a way to kind of challenge yourself and work your way up from the bottom. I am in the top division after working my way in there, and it's really fun. You kind of go. It's like a promotion system, and it's a really good, fun league because the whole ecosystem, we kind of like encourage each other. And I think you learn a lot from playing in that league, and helps you in your other leagues too. So definitely it's a patron perk too. So you don't have to pay extra for the league. It's just if you're a patron of Fantasy Hockey Life, you can play in that. So excited to have you guys in there. It'd be great.
excellent.
Can't wait.
All right, Junior, you want to plug in our stuff?
Yes. Okay. So follow along on social media at X, TikTok, and Instagram at Partial Break Pod. Obviously, subscribe on YouTube, leave us reviews. It's the best way to support us. We do this for free, but we do it because we love it, and your support means the world. So if you do care and have a little bit of time, just leave us that review, leave us that comment, engage in our social posts, and we'll hear from you again next week.
All right, everybody.
Thank you again,
very
Victor.
much. Thank you, Victor.
Yeah.
Have a
you
good
guys.
game.